Hi, everyone. Welcome. Get started in a minute. Good to see so many MACC members here today. Hi, everyone. Going to give folks just a few more seconds to come in and then we'll get started. Great turnout. Thanks, everyone, for being here. All right, let's get to it. Hi, everyone. I'm Laurel Hansen, MACC's Program and Member Engagement Manager, and I'm joined by my co-moderator, Claire Owen, MACC's Communications Director. Welcome and thank you for joining us today for MACC Zooms In on the 2023 Legislative Session Debrief. This is another one of these MACC Zoom sessions where we bring members together and convene around topics that matter to you. While each of our members has a distinct voice in the community, the MACC Network is united by a belief that we have greater impact when we partner and connect. So on behalf of your network, MACC, thank you for being here today. We have so many great MACC member organizations represented here today. Just want to encourage you to introduce yourselves in chat. We'd love to get to know you. Now, I'd like to welcome MACC's CEO, Steve Houts, for a brief message about how we are making a change to our acknowledgement practices. Steve, are you with us?
I am. Hi, everybody. Thanks, Laurel. Steve Houts here. I serve as President and CEO of MACC. It's great to see everyone. Normally in this space at this time, we would pause and read a prepared land acknowledgement statement, as has been our practice. Based on some very specific feedback that we have received from more than one member organization, we have decided to not use that statement today or in the future for its harm toward our Native and Indigenous members, neighbors, and communities. We have come to understand that our practice was problematic and it has been performative. We are grateful to those who have shared their feedback on the specific ways it has been harmful. We recognize that our statement was both too vague and too broad. The lack of specificity in naming Minnesota's Indigenous peoples and the use of white colonialist supremacist language in a land acknowledgement statement is not only counterproductive, but actively harmful. And acknowledgement without action is moral exhibitionism and distracts from making meaningful change. So we intend to make some change, and we want to be transparent during this process because we are not perfect and we are not experts, but we will share what we're learning and how we plan to move forward. We want to ensure that MACC stands up for our members who are serving a variety of communities. Rather than a statement that doesn't seek to influence change or offer tangible support, we want to take a more actions-based approach. Words have value, but can't come alone to the table. Our hope in making this comment today is to acknowledge our mistake and name the change that we think is needed. MACC is on its own journey in this process, and what that ultimately will look like, we're not sure yet, but we are taking steps now to seek out information from experts within our network and communities to guide us. If you have questions about what we've shared in these remarks or anything you'd like to discuss with us as we move forward, we would be grateful and honored with your continued partnership. Please reach out to myself or to our box info@maccmin.org. Thanks.
Thank you, Steve. Appreciate it. All right. So I'm excited to share two more things before we get started today. We're announcing the launch of a wonderful new resource for MACC members. We've heard from our members about the workforce challenges that every organization is experiencing. So we've launched Ask MACC Workforce Solutions. You'll find this valuable hub on MACC's website, literally at the tip of your fingers. It includes bite-sized workforce podcast episodes, which, I mean, I just am so excited that yours truly, I had the pleasure of speaking with several of MACC's in-house HR experts and doing some of these recorded conversations. So just personally, I hope you check them out. Our site also includes other featured resources and trainings, and we will be continually adding to it. So please check that out and let us know what you think. And then one more thing, a note that MACC has moved. We've moved our offices and we are celebrating with you on June 6th. We invite all MACC members to join us for a party, the grand opening of the new MACC headquarters, which is basically in Northeast Minneapolis. And this is a network hub, this new headquarters. Tuesday, June 6th from 4 to 6 p.m. Please come network with other members, enjoy some food and drink, and get a glimpse of MACC's new strategic framework and more. You can see some of the great meeting spaces that are accessible to all of you as well. We hope to see you there. All right. Now on to the content with our special guest today. First, we have a quick poll question to ask you. This is setting the stage, kind of getting to see where everyone's at. So we want you to answer this live poll question. We'll show the results and then we'll get started. All right, our first question regarding the new paid family and medical leave law. Where are you at? Have you started to plan for changes at your organization? Have you not started to plan for changes at your organization, or are you not anticipating changes from your current operations? Want to see where everyone's at. We're going to talk more about this new law and in the future also provide some more support. All right, we are seeing a mix of responses. Give it a couple more seconds. Most of you haven't started planning yet. Just the law just passed, so that's to be expected. Great participation. All right. Okay, let's move on to introducing our special guest. It's my pleasure to introduce Amy Koch. Amy's been a political strategist with Hilden Advocacy and Law for over 5 years. She is fresh, just literally moments from the recent legislative session, and she's ready to share updates and answer your questions. You can share your comments and ask your questions via chat or raise your hand. And we also have a little time at the end for Q&A. So help me welcome Amy Koch. Hi, Amy.
Hey, Laurel. Hi, everyone. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay. Yes. Well, yes, the legislative session wrapped at around 11 p.m. on Monday. So here we sit Wednesday with good timing. But as most of you haven't started planning for paid family medical leave, we're still sifting through the bills because despite hopes for an early session wrap up, that didn't happen. They went right to the end. And of course, a lot of the big bills were held until the last days. So I have my wonderful assistant, Rachel, who's on and is going to share her screen. And we'll go through a PowerPoint. And I want to leave as much time as possible to get reaction. So, all right, we're calling it end of the 23 legislative session update. Next slide. Okay, so the overall budget, as you recall, so as I said, did not wrap up early despite all our hopes and dreams. The last time the legislature finished its work on the budget on time was 2013. So just a little fun tidbit fact there. And of course, this year, we all know many areas of this budget saw historic spending increases because of a $17.8 billion surplus. 17.8 billion. The overwhelming majority of that was spent. There was some set aside for tax relief, but much of that was even paid in the tax bill with some tax increases. So, and then also just another tidbit for all of us that are tired of legislative session, the legislative leaders that set the next start date for next year, Monday, February 12th, 2024. So mark your calendars. All the work that needs to get done or started is February 12th of 2024 before the legislature will go back in session. Also, a lot of folks want to know when a bill becomes law. If a bill is passed without a date, which most of these budgets are, or most of these bills are, it becomes law as of July 1st, unless there's another date. In odd numbered years, which we are, if a bill is passed by the legislature and presented to the governor during the last 3 days of session, he has 3 days to sign or veto, or it becomes law. But just at 10 a.m., the governor signed. He had a ceremony he called the One Minnesota Bill signing, and he did a very large public signing of all of these budget items on the Capitol steps. So as we speak, these bills are officially law, and the fiscal year starts July 1st. Next slide. So, next slide, please.
Maybe it decided not to.
Oh, nonprofit grants. There we go. All right.
Yeah.
So I will get into the budget bills, but I wanted to touch on something that MACC was working very hard on this session, as always. Sort of the overall question of nonprofit grant oversight. You know, as per usual, and because of some bad actors or potential alleged bad actors, there was a lot of focus this year, kind of behind the scenes, on nonprofit grant oversights. And there was some language that was proposed about mid-session that had to do with this. That was not actually, there was not really input from the nonprofit community. It was input, it was just something that the House staffers put together. But fortunately, MACC and the Minnesota Council of Nonprofits and the Minnesota Council on Foundations were able to work with the Speaker of the House in particular and their staff to draft some language that would give comfort to lawmakers that there was some oversight in place, but also that would not be harmful and obstructive, or at least as least harmful and obstructive as we could possibly get. Folks in the nonprofit community know that we already do a boatload of oversight and paperwork, so we were trying to minimize that, but it was pretty hard this year to get out with nothing. And as you saw, so as you see, there was some language that was put in, but it was thanks to Tricia and Steve and Marie Ellis at the Council of Nonprofits. I think that it was it's at least workable. Also, some good news on that front: 6 additional staff for the Office of Grant Making were added, moving the total from 1 to 7 FTEs. And 3 of those are specifically going to be focused on equity and state grant making. So that is good news. There's also a grants management feasibility study. A couple things of the language: any grants over 25,000 must submit a report. I think we're all pretty used to that. Grants of 50,000 or more for nonprofits must submit a 990 and complete a pre-award risk assessment. And also, and this is a bit a possibility of a suspension for a grantee that's found in noncompliance for up to 3 years or not grant awarded. So there's a little bit of teeth in that bill, but I think the work with the new folks at the Office of Grant Making are going to be helpful in sort of guiding that and making that process less laborious and less faster and more efficient. And I think that MACC and others are going to have a real place at the table to make that happen as well. So good news, bad news, a little bit on the nonprofit grant oversight, but I think we mitigated as much as we could. Next slide. Another big item, and that was a part of our poll, is the paid family medical leave. Paid family medical leave and earned sick and safe time passed. It was a top priority for the DFL, and we're the 12th state to pass it. So what the bill is going to do, much like unemployment insurance, that's probably the closest thing that I can kind of equate it to. There's going to be a state-run insurance program to provide workers with 20 weeks of paid time off annually to deal with family or medical issues. This is going to be a hit to employers. So everyone on here is going to pay into this account. It's going to be managed by the Family and Medical Benefits Insurance Division with Indeed. Employers are going to be allowed to institute private plans, but not required to pay premiums into the state program for as long as the program is similar to the public program. It's any employee is eligible, full or part-time, after earning more than $3,500 in the base period at any Minnesota employer. So this is quite far-reaching. The state is going to pick up sort of the first run at this, and then I think it's in. So the state is actually going to do the first payment into this. It starts January 1st, 2026, and then the employers will be expected to start paying in. So I think there's a lot of questions unanswered around implementation. I know this is going to have a big impact on nonprofits. It's going to have a big impact on businesses, everyone with employees across the state. And I think the one good thing is that we've got the 2024 session and the 2025 session to work with lawmakers, work with people with the folks at DEED, and on the how this gets implemented, which is almost as important as the what gets implemented. So I'll go to the next, and we'll answer questions at the end here as best we can. Next is earned sick and safe time. In addition to paid family medical leave, another priority effective January 1st, 2024, all employees working at least 80 hours in a year, full or part-time, so 80 hours, there is no small employer exemption. Employees may accrue up to 48 hours of earned sick and safe a year. And employers may require notice either 7 days before the use or as soon as practicable. So there's where it gets a little dicey. So to notify that they'll be using this earned sick and safe, there's a 7-day requirement or as soon as practicable. So I expect from DEED some follow-up information on this. As I said, just passed in the last week and a half. I think it finally included in the jobs bill at the end. And so stay tuned for more information on earned sick and safe. Next slide. Another big one, another big bill for the state of Minnesota. And I apologize for the dog barking here at the office. Maggie is very excited about this one, apparently. Cannabis was legalized in the state of Minnesota. Adult use age 21 and over starting July 1st, 2023. Majority of the provisions are going into effect August 1st. So again, expect some follow-up. Minnesotans will be allowed to grow 8 plants, transport up to 2 ounces and have 2 pounds at their home, 2 pounds. The bill creates an Office of Cannabis Management to study the impaired driving and manage cannabis businesses. Misdemeanor marijuana offenses will be expunged, and the creation of the Cannabis Expungement Board will evaluate felony marijuana. Businesses and nonprofits, employers are able to keep any current drug policies already in use. So I imagine for members, that is a key portion of this. In addition to working with the Office of Cannabis Management, a new office that we're going to have to deal with, but businesses, per the legislation, House File 100, are able to keep current drug testing policies in use.
All right.
Okay, so then just overall budget, folks.
Amy?
Oh, yep, go ahead.
Can we do a quick poll question before you move on?
Would love that. Great.
Yeah,
Perfect
we
timing.
have a question, a poll question we want to pose to the audience about expungement. So everyone, please answer if you would. We've heard there are 60,000 misdemeanor marijuana cases eligible for automatic expungement. once this is legalized. And we're just wondering if this is on your organization's radar in any way as you work with community members, this particular issue. And we've got options to answer. We expect to support the community in this change. It's not something that falls into our purview of engagement, or we're uncertain at this time. So it looks like the majority of people answering are expecting to support their community in this change. And that could show up in a lot of different ways. So we're being kind of general. And then some uncertainty, which is to be expected as well. All right, thank you. All right, back to you, Amy.
Closing my poll results there. Okay, so coming to the big budget, well, maybe we should answer some questions. I do want to talk to some top line notes, some big budget items that I think will be of interest. A lot of our members received in the jobs in the workforce development bill individual appropriations, and there was some large funds set aside for workforce development in the health and human services area, and overall in early childhood. Overall, we're still kind of adding the numbers, but it's looking like in just this biennium, and much of this continues on. There's $1.9 billion going to early learning and early childhood. So in the form of childcare retention grants, early learning scholarships, CCAP at the 75th percentile, child tax credits, child care tax credits for newborn, single newborn moms and dads. Let me try to think. Retain, teach. There's workforce development in the early childhood money. Lots of money in that direction. Over $1 billion in housing. So money towards rental assistance, towards building projects, but over $1 billion, up from, I will just say, in some areas, really $10 million. And this new budget, $1 billion. Homeless dollars. There is in the Homeless Youth Act. I'm trying to think. I'm trying to remember all the numbers. $15 million increase each. $15 million increase this biennium, and in the base going forward, there is $30 million in ESP funding this biennium. $55 million in the out biennium. There is $100 million in homeless shelter capital, which is just unprecedented, unbelievable. And so that's in the homeless arena, as well as some money available for some pilot programs and some money to the counties as well, which will be flowing out to some of our because they're to do some direct work with organizations. So some really big numbers coming out of this budget for members. And we've supplied some of a breakdown, but expect more numbers coming. Trisha, I think you're on our email, and feel free to share kind of our initial breakdown that we put out last night with members. But there's much more in depth to come. But those are some of kind of the top line numbers. So I can pause with that. And one more thing, almost forgot. 2.6 billion in capital investment, with almost over $1 billion of that going in cash money to organizations. Many members of MACC have received some dollars flowing through. Folks should feel free to share, but there are some fantastic numbers as far as that goes. And for next year, just so you know, even though it's not till February 12th, 2024, $1 billion was set aside again for cash capital investment for next year. $1 billion additional set aside for next year's capital investments.
All right.
Don't want to miss that number.
Yeah, right. That's significant. And I mentioned in the chat, but if there's anyone on this call that just got some great news part of this session and would like to share, feel free to unmute yourself and give us a shout out. We'd love to hear from you. I also welcome others to jump into chat or unmute yourselves and bring your questions to Amy. You know, I know Amy, our members wear two hats. They're serving the community and they're also employers. So
That's right.
if they were wearing their employer hat, what would be the things that you would most elevate to their attention that they should be really thinking about? You know,
Yeah.
what are the highlights?
Well, we tried, so that's what we tried to highlight, folks. Obviously, paid family medical leave and earned sick and safe is going to be, there's a cost there. There's just no way to get around it, and being mindful of that. I also think the grants making the work at the OGM, but so not only to nonprofits, but I think MACC has played such a key role in that and will continue to play a key role in sort of keeping an eye on how that runs down now, and what those new FTEs and how their work gets done. And then, I think others are kind of watching the cannabis legalization and what that means for employers. And so any help that we can be there as well, we're more than happy. Again, much of this is still shaking out. I think back to sort of ARP dollars and money that came in during COVID. And, it took a little while for the process to go. These agencies are frantically dealing with these massive bills and massive dollar amounts. But I think anything that we can do as a group and as nonprofits to help get those things implemented, help get those dollars out the door, so that it's not a year from now or a year and a half from now before that money gets out the door, could be really helpful.
Thanks, Amy. Boy, we've heard some good news in chat from so many of our members, and thanks for sharing your stories. And it's not every session that we're really able to just not celebrate, but just to share the joy. I guess it is a celebration when members are recognized for what they're doing in the community. We've got a note from Suzanne at Phyllis Wheatley. Their camp was awarded development dollars. Eastside is getting funds for workforce development. Simpson got funded for an emergency shelter. Urban Homeworks received funds to build 15 deeply affordable homes in North Minneapolis. Tubman received cash bonding for capital improvements that are so needed. And I know you've said the list goes on, but it kind of gives me goosebumps to think about the things that can happen, right, in the community. And of course, can't forget Keystone. Yay, congratulations. Their new food center, which is literally coming on fast and furious. We heard last night by the end of the year, I understood. So
yes,
yeah,
I was lucky enough to be watching the HHS bill pass off the Senate floor and the House floor with Avenues for Youth, with Catherine, with Beth over at the Link. And there was a little bit of tears. I'm not gonna lie. There was, besides the money in the HHS, then we got news of the capital investment. Both those projects got significant funding. It's fantastic. Merge and Copal and Workforce. It was quite an end.
Yeah. Well, thank you as well for being on this journey with our members. I know you're not, you can't look into the future, but if you're thinking about next year, what do you see on the horizon? Anything?
Yeah, well, capital investment is still a lot of money on the set aside for that. We'll know a lot more in November. So something to watch in November is what happens to this budget. A big chunk of that 17 billion was one-time money, which you saw. So that's why you had the large amount of capital investment, because that is one time. You saw the walls checks, which is one-time money. So they had to try to spend some of that. The budget forecast in November, which is not what they will base the budget on next year, but it is the peek into things. We'll be watching very closely. What's going to happen with this economy? What's going to happen? Because if there's additional dollars available, then a supplemental budget can be passed. If there is a drastic reduction in expected revenue, because this is all based on projections, and once the money won't start coming in until July 1st, so they'll know by November a little bit more what it's looking like. A supplemental budget might be needed to balance things out again. So I think for members, besides kind of watching how those big policy issues are getting implemented, as well as making sure that the money gets efficiently spent, is the next thing to watch is that November forecast. And what is that going to mean for that February start date of 2024?
Great.
But we should take a little time to celebrate before we start.
Absolutely. You talked a little bit about the new things occurring with the grants management, and what did you mention the timeline on that and what people can expect?
Well, they don't have a straight timeline, but the money will become available July 1st. So I assume they'll be hiring. It was in the works kind of originally, so I assume there's sort of a basic plan, but now they can implement. And so we'll be kind of watching, and I think, if we can do some work maybe with OGM in how that takes place. So.
Okay. And you mentioned that the Family Leave and Medical Act was 2026.
Right. So paid family medical leave is January 1st, 2026. The earned sick and safe is January of 2024. So that is more, that's the 48 hours. That is more soon. The big one, the paid family medical leave is 2026.
Yeah.
Good questions. Really good questions. And you're going to put this in the packet for everyone, I think, right, Laurel? They're going to have a goodie bag.
Yeah, everyone will get the slide deck, the recording, and then there were a couple additional resources that you provided, Amy, that we'll share as well. Those are going to be helpful for people to have on hand. When you think about something that's starting in 2026, it's like, what do we do now? What is the next best thing we can do now?
Right. Well, I think this is going to be housed within deed, as my understanding, and so which would make sense. And so I think it is, as they roll out or start rolling out kind of the rules and the implementation, I think there'll be opportunities for input. I also think that if we start to see things that are problematic or red flags or even opportunities within this, as I said, we have 2 more legislative sessions. We have 2024 and 2025 before that paid family medical leave implementation. So I would just say, like, I think we need to watch as they implement, watch as the rules are drafted, watch as things start to move forward. And there is the intention by putting it out that far is to give us time to adjust, to understand, and to tweak as we need.
Yeah. Couple of follow-up questions in chat about PMFL. Does it have a head count minimum, and how does it interact with short-term disability? Do you know those details at this point?
I don't think we know all those details yet. I don't think we know. There's been some discussion around it, but I'm not honestly even sure where it all landed in some of those things. We were following it in conference committee, but the conference committee did not meet very much publicly. They pretty much just rolled out the bill and voted on it. That was one, I think, bad thing about this session. There was not very much public, because you had a different paid family medical leave in the House than you did in the Senate. And the idea is the conference committee comes together and they discuss the changes that they make. There was very little public discussion. And so we can do some looking into that for folks. Those are good questions.
Yeah. And another question, because I think that topic is, I think PMFL is like the high level of interest where people are coming to. A question from Joanne, pardon me if I got your name spelled right or pronounced correctly. Could PMFL state option possibly replace our private short-term disability vendor service needs? That's a very specific question.
I think it could. I mean, that answer will be personal for some, in your boards and yourselves and your staff. But I think it could. I just think that, let's wait and see what they do. But I think that's a possibility.
Great. Yeah, we welcome more questions. We haven't talked a lot about the cannabis law change. I know as an employer, you had a statement there about your workplace drug policies remaining intact, and that doesn't impact that. The expungement item it says automatic expungement. So what will that, can you help us understand what that will mean for our community members? is it something you still have to like apply for or?
Yes, and there is actually going to be like an office of expungement that's going to be working with folks to expedite the situation and to sort of develop what that looks like. But that sort of reform was really hand in hand with the legalization. No one wanted to see legalization without some actual like sentencing or some ability for folks that had, you know, been caught under, you know, public safety, caught in the public safety, caught under legal previous to the legalization. So it's really the two are very equal in the eyes of this legislature. They didn't want to legalize without allowing for a way for people that have been prosecuted under previous laws to not have a way to get out from under that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Great. Claudia has a clarifying question. And it's in chat. I'll read it. An employee working 80+ hours in 1 year, so one pay period for a typical full-time employee.
Yep.
Will be granted 48 hours of paid sick leave. Just want to make sure I'm understanding it. It sounds unreal.
That is correct.
Mhm.
80 hours in a year. That's there's no small employer exemption. May accrue up to 48 hours of earned sick and safe. So also I think in how they accrue is outlined in the legislation, and we'll be hearing more about that. But I just want to emphasize they may accrue up to 48 hours of earned sick and safe. And so again, depending on what you have in place already, this may be not burdensome or it may be. Yep.
Yeah, I think there's still a lot to understand. You know,
Yes.
also the clarifying issue of what if those 80 hours are with different employers and
Yep,
those types
yep.
of scenarios. Lots of different scenarios.
Lots of stuff.
Mhm.
Yes, and I apologize, folks, that we don't have like more immediate. It's, you know, it's
Yeah.
just we're very fresh to this.
Yeah, right. Like literally, it just ended.
It just he just
Do you want-
signed it at 10 o'clock. So
Yeah. I think I think it's an exciting year. Are there any personal observations you want to share about, how many legislative sessions have you been through in your career, and what did this one seem like to you?
more than I would like to admit to you is the answer on the number. And yeah, I just haven't, this has been the most active session I've ever seen. We started January 3rd and we never let up. And so for folks that engaged, and some that were engaging for maybe the first time on an appropriation or a capital investment, or just trying to follow it, don't be afraid. This is one of the toughest sessions I've ever seen to try to follow and keep up. But I think we did in a really in an incredible way. When I think about members that are in the Youth Services Network, when I think about the early childhood advocates, when I think about the workforce people that went, that it was just, it was an unbelievably good ending for so many, but the process itself was a very wild ride. So I just would say we should all take a little rest, do a little celebration. And then I think there's strategy and work to be done, as always, in the interim for next year. February 12th is going to come up faster than you think.
Oh my God.
Yeah, but also I would just say too, this is such an opportunity that how we do this and how this gets implemented and the work that gets, done as a result of this cash infusion, this investment, is going to be really important. So let's celebrate. But I really want to work with members to make sure that all of this is done in such a, effective, efficient way. We want to work with those agencies. We want to get this money out the door. We want to get it to the people that it's intended for. The legislature did their job now. They voted and they said, yes, these are our priorities. These are the people that we want to support and help, and the families. And so I think it's up to us and now the agencies to make sure that gets done in the best way possible. And it's exciting. Such an opportunity.
I have a quick question. This is Trisha from MACC. Amy, thanks for being here again with us. I know you're running on not a lot of sleep after these last couple of weeks. You know that the work that we did as a network last year, really trying to advocate for some COVID relief dollars specifically for nonprofits and specifically for human service organizations.
Right.
It was really tough last year, and in an election year with the Feeding Our Futures fraud and scandal. And you and I spent time talking last year about the general, in an election year, the vibe, and sort of even legislators who were our friends sort of stepping back, from being advocates for us because we were somehow a taboo all of a sudden. I would love to hear your perspective on how that is still there or not, and the kind of the vibe you get about human service nonprofits in general from the conversations you've been a part of this session with legislators. And I know a lot of hard work, specifically on the nonprofit accountability work. I know MACC cares a lot about this because one of the things we're really trying to focus on into the future is thinking about administrative relief. And when you talk about administrative relief in the context of a fraud scandal, it's really, how do we navigating that conversation's hard. So I'm just interested in your takeaways from the attitude of legislators toward our type of nonprofits, and how we should be thinking about that as we head into next legislative session. And I do think we are going to have some folks up for election again next year, right? So, yeah,
Well, a little bit. So we knew going in that this was going to be a question of the year. And it's interesting because the undercurrent of it was there, but no one talks about it publicly. The amendment that they put on over that I talked about, the House created an amendment. They didn't hear that in committee. They just were going to put it into all their bills in conference committee, the requirements. Now we were able to get word of that, and we were able to get a meeting with the speaker. And so first of all, by the way, Steve and Tricia, we made meetings right at the beginning, at the top of session with like John Hoffman, Jim Abler on both sides of the aisle, because we knew that no matter, even if it wasn't being loudly talked about, it was going to be an undercurrent. And so MACC was really, I think, proactive. And then when we, caught wind of this language that was being put, being told to all the chairs, you need to put this in your bill, we were able to mobilize quickly members of MACC, other nonprofits, as I said, Council of Nonprofits. We banded together with our allies, and we made a really important meeting with the speaker, where we walked through our, kind of our side and saying, like, there's so many good organizations. We're used to accountability. We don't shy away from accountability, but don't put extra burdens on us that are going to hinder the work we do. And it was a really good meeting. And it was a result of that the speaker said, okay, work with staff, draft some language that we can feel, that can give us some accountability, but also is not going to, be overly burdensome. And I think, so I'm thinking with some time and with that kind of proactive approach that we took this year, and again, always keeping an eye on next year, always keeping this as part of the conversation. I think that's going to help us in the next session to come. It was, just a really unfortunate, horrible, terrible story. And legislators are political creatures at their core. And we just have to help through that and educate and keep talking about it. I also think that they just don't understand everything you do. And so what I might recommend for folks in the interim, if you can get a legislator to visit you, and you can add that into your conversation, get a visit, talk about all the great things you do, but add a portion of your conversation about accountability. That's what I'm working with, some of my nonprofit clients is saying, yeah, let's get a visit. Let's talk about what we're doing, but also let's have a conversation about, walk them through. These are all the ways. We don't just get a grant. It isn't just a fat check that gets written for us and handed out to us. There is a lot of hoops and a lot of rigmarole and a lot of accountability that goes into those grants, whether they're direct appropriations or whether it's grants received. So I think having an honest conversation about that would be really helpful over the interim. So if anybody's doing meetings, I would highly suggest.
Yeah, that's an excellent suggestion, Amy. And another example of how, as a network, if we're on the same page with the same messages, this is how we make things better.
That's right.
Rachel also shared in the chat for folks in the post Zoom email that you get from us, our e-goodie bag. You'll get a sort of like a fact sheet about the PMFL Act. So law. So watch for that. So there's going to be some good information in there. We have another poll question we'd like to drop in, and then we'll wrap things up with Amy and any final comments and questions there. So we talked about this PMFL law, and we want to know if you have an interest in zooming in with us on this. Not tomorrow, but would you be interested in attending a future MACC Zoom in with legal representatives? So I'm thinking like HR attorneys to help navigate the new rules around the Paid Family and Medical Leave Act, sick time, as well as the legalized cannabis employment practices. Dig a little deeper when we know a little bit more. So thanks for answering. It looks like people have an interest in that, or possibly have an interest in that. So that just affirms what we were thinking, but we just wanted to make sure it was something that our members would want to see. And so we will work on that and bring that to you in the future as well. All right, any final questions or questions for Amy, or even just comments that you came with today, thoughts that you have? And Amy, anything else from you?
I think I've talked way too much, but we're here to help anyone with questions. Run them through Trisha, and we're happy to help.
We have a couple minutes here. If anyone wants to unmute, you're welcome to speak. Great to have our members together today. There's lots to think about, lots to be joyful about.
Amy, I do have one question. I know you mentioned earlier that there's going to be a lot of money on the bottom line for bonding capital investment again. Can you just say a little bit about like the typical kind of budget cycle, and should our members, I think we have a good slice of our members that were like at the table, fought for some money. What do you think that, should folks that haven't, ponied themselves up to the legislature this year, should they get in line for next year? Like, is there going to be enough, like how hard is the environment going to be, do you think?
Yeah. Well, one thing we were fighting this year is because of the gridlock at the Capitol the last couple of years, we'd not had a bonding bill since 2020. So there was a backlog. There just tends to be, there is sort of a queue for projects, right? And sometimes you get your phase one, maybe you get your pre-development and your land acquisition, and then you get a couple million, and then you come back in a year or so and you come back the next year and you start the construction process. Like, it's kind of a capital stack and a process that you have to walk through. But given that we hadn't had a capital investment bill for 3 years, there was a lot of backup, I would say, but there was also a lot of money. And so if you are considering a capital project, and you're getting together your capital, I don't know what you call it, like your not your executive board, but your capital investment committees, or you're starting to think about development and fundraising, a piece of that would be to explore this. I think that it's not going to build your whole project. I'll tell you that. Like, to go and to think that, oh, I've got a $20 million build and I'm going to get 20 million. That's highly unlikely. But to have the state as a portion of your capital stack and help that, first of all, of course, it closes your budget gaps. It leverages donations. Donors love to see that the state or locals, as you know, are in as a partner in this. And so, and like I said, there is kind of a queue. So you have just as any capital campaign has a long trajectory, right? You don't expect to raise all your money in the first year. Take a long view to capital investment at the Capitol. But if you talk to members that have gone through it, they'll tell you it's a painful labor process. But in the end, there are some really good things. I think that Mary at Keystone is all smiles today. I think that Phyllis Wheatley, I think there's smiles on their faces. So
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, and what a benefit of being in a network is you see some of the other MACC members that you are collaborators and colleagues with, reach out to them, and they've been through the gauntlet and come out the other side. And I'm sure they'd be willing to share some wisdom. So yeah, wonderful. Well, this has been a great.
And thank you all for the opportunity to speak. We love it. So
Yeah, we really appreciate it. We're lucky to have an expert who is able to come and speak with us today and also work with us throughout the year. It really makes all the difference. Unless there's any more questions, we'll go ahead and wrap up a couple minutes early. Last call for comments or questions. Did I miss anybody? Okay. All right. So thanks again, Amy. You're a really special guest with us. We appreciate you sharing your valuable knowledge. And I certainly want to thank all the participants for their attendance today. I mentioned that after session e-goodie bag, it's going to be full of good stuff. So watch for that in your inbox. Also, I just really hope to see all of you at our grand opening party checkout on June 6th. So you can check out the Network Hub and see how it might work for you as well. So, all right. Well, this brings us to a close for today's Zoom. I want to wish everyone well and have a great day. Thanks so much. See you soon.
thanks all.
Bye.